Welcome you all to my session. Today I would be covering Azure SQL Database Essentials, Key Features, and Security Fundamentals. If you are new to Azure, then this particular session will serve you as a great kickstart. If you have already experienced in Azure, then my session will help you as a very good refresher. And I am Padma Achanta, and I'm a cloud data strategist where I have over 10 plus years of experience in both SQL Server and Azure, the combination of it. And besides SQL Server and the working on Microsoft tools, I also have experience in Mongo Atlas, Mongo, and also some of the IAC technologies like Ansible and Terraform. I'm a founder of dbawalls.com. With that, I'm moving on to my next slide where you see some agenda here. Today, I'm going to cover deployment options in Azure, benefits of Azure SQL, deployment models, a quick demo, how to create Azure SQL database, encryption best practices, RBAC, role-based access control, and some takeaways. With that, let's deep dive into our Azure SQL Server. So in Azure, we have multiple deployment models. So those are like three. First one is infrastructure as a service, which we call as IaaS, platform as a service, which we call as PaaS, and software as a service, which we call as SaaS. Let's look into each and every like these deployment models. So infrastructure as a service, this Azure provides you the basic computing. So what I mean by that is the basic computing like virtual machine, networking and storage, where you have to manage OS, applications, runtime, and any patches that is like maintenance. So like SQL Server Virtual Machine is one such example which comes under infrastructure as a service model. So scaling up of and scaling down of the resources. So like increasing CPU, increasing memory, like increasing all these resources have to be manual. It's not like automatic with infrastructure as a service. And also you can also use scripts, maybe PowerShell scripts or any different scripts to increase, but it's not automatic as part of Azure deployment model. And this infrastructure as a service is ideal if you want to take full control of your SQL Server or full control of your resource. For example, if you think that that you wanted to install specific SQL version, specific OS version, then for those things, then yes, you can take full control by using infrastructure as a service, where Azure provides you the basic infrastructure, where the rest you can take it. And next goes to PaaS, that is Platform as a Service. In Platform as a Service, Azure provides you the benefits of infrastructure as a service plus platform as a service features. What I mean by that is you get infrastructure as a service features like virtual machine, networking and storage, and besides that you also get OS apps, runtime, and also any updates or any patches, any maintenance is taken care by Azure itself. So all you have to worry about is you just deploy your code and maintain your application. Just write your code and maintain your applications. This is definitely ideal for developers or even DBAs who really don't want to do anything or spend time on maintenance, where you just worry about your application and your code. And from DBA's perspective, maybe just your designing and tuning of your databases. So that is platform as a service. So with platform as a service, you get some benefits like automated backups, you get automated patching, high availability is available, and also dynamic scaling is available. If you want to increase your resources, compute resources, then you can dynamically do up and down. So that is taken care by Azure itself. So and under platform as a service, Azure SQL database and managed instance, these are the two examples for platform as a service. So when I'm talking about managed instance, let me tell you a little bit about what managed instance is. In my terms, um, I would say managed instance is little advanced feature of Azure SQL database. So what I mean by that is in Azure SQL database, you don't have SQL Server agent, you don't have cross database queries, you don't have service broker, but whereas in managed instance, you have these options available. And that's the reason I call it as the advanced version. And the most important thing which you have to make a note is Azure SQL database is scoped at the database level, whereas managed instance, as the name indicates, managed instance provides instance level experience. So, like for instance, if you want to have, this is ideal for like, if you wanted to have, see the exact features of what you have your on-prem application on the Azure, then you can go with managed instance where you get also the instance level experience. Um, and also now let me talk about software as a service. Software as a service is nothing but it is completely a cloud-based application hosted on the cloud and managed by Microsoft, where users, they just connect to the internet and just use the software. So that is about software as a service. So now we spoke about like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Let me give you a small example. Like when I was going through Azure, I have like learned Azure by connecting to some of the real-time examples, and that made my understanding and learning easier. So I'm going to give you one such example. Infrastructure as a service is like renting a bare apartment. That means like you just have the apartment and you don't have anything else. You have to get your own appliances, you paint your house, you fix all your lights. So infrastructure of the service gives a similar kind of experience. Whereas platform as a service is like you're renting a furnished apartment. So you have all the appliances and every paint, lights, everything is ready. You just get your own things like your own clothes or anything specific to you, get your own things, which I relate that to data and then live in it. So that's platform as a service, one example. And software as a service is like staying in a hotel and just enjoy the service, right? So all you have to do is just connect to the internet and then enjoy the service. So that's how I relate the differences between infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Um, and one such example of software as a service is Microsoft Office 365 or even Teams, we call. So when we connect to Teams, we just use the feature and we don't really worry about the data or how the application works and how to maintain the data, nothing like that. So that's one example. Um, moving on, um, I think I talked about the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And this is like one example. This is like one table where you find the differences between Azure SQL database and managed instance. So if you see the table, you have change data capture, common language runtime, cross database queries, cross database transactions, database mail, resource governor, and SQL Server agent. All these options are not available in Azure SQL DB, whereas it's available in Azure Managed Instance, where automatic index tuning, that alone is not available in Managed Instance, where that is available in Azure SQL DB. So I spoke about SaaS. Let's talk about some of the benefits of Azure SQL database. So Azure SQL database, it gives you seamless deployment experience. So what I mean by that is just in few clicks, you have your SQL database where you don't really have to worry anything about your software, your infra, and any hardware. So just with a few clicks, your SQL database is ready, and just pay only for what you need. So just it is also cost efficient. So when you click when you create your Azure SQL database, you have an option called auto pause and auto resume. So using these options, when if your database is active for more than an hour or so, based on your settings, you can have your database paused, and then it resumes once the activity on the database continues. So that's one option. And also I would like to let you know that there is one more option called reservation. So if you decide to have your Azure SQL database for more than 2 years or 3 years or for a longer period of time, you can talk that to Microsoft, and they give you a reservation pricing for longer term savings. So the longer time you keep your resource, they give you the better savings. So in that way also you can save some time. You can save some price by reserving your resource. And the third one is like no hardware. As I mentioned before, you really don't have to worry about anything about hardware, the physical hardware. Microsoft takes care of everything on the back end, including storage, computing, and networking. Again, there is no much maintenance needed for Azure SQL database. Again, it's a PaaS service, and Microsoft automatically provides you 99.99% of availability as per the SLA. So this is really right nice for most of the workloads. So 99.99 is really great. And again, you get optimized performance with artificial intelligence embedded in Azure SQL. So it does automatic tuning for you. So again, that's one of the great option. It's scalable and secure. So scalable is like you can automatically up and down your resources, scale up and scale down your resources. And also with all the security options available, like transparent data encryption, like Azure Defender for SQL, with all these options, you can have your Azure database more secured. Moving on to the next slide. Here you see some of the deployment of models in the screenshot. So whenever you want to deploy Azure SQL, you can do in multiple ways, right? So you can either go to Azure portal and then do some clicks and have your Azure SQL ready, or you can go through Azure CLI and then have your code and then deploy using Azure CLI, or you can also use infrastructure as a code. I use Terraform to deploy Azure SQL. So you also have something called ARM templates, that is Azure Resource Manager templates. So I will show you when I was going through the demo. So Azure Resource Manager template is nothing but it's a template which is in JSON format. So you update the JSON document, you update the JSON template to your desired state, how you want your Azure SQL to look like, and what other resources you want, what resources you wanted to delete. You have your template ready. And once you have the template ready, Azure Resource Manager will deploy the template, and then it creates and deletes the resources based on your code, and that takes care automatically. So that is again ARM template. So these are like in multiple ways you can deploy your resources. And moving on to the next slide. Azure SQL database offers two purchasing models. So if you see my diagram, these purchasing models are DTU based purchasing model and vCore based purchasing model. So DTU is nothing but it stands for database transaction unit, and vCore is nothing but virtual core purchasing model. So each of these models has multiple service tiers, and these service tier offers great performance, storage limit, flexibility, and also multiple cost flexibility as well, and also with the different availability features. So you have, based on your needs, you can select what service tier and what purchasing model you want to go for. Let's deep dive into each and every purchasing model. So I will start with database transaction unit. If you can excuse me, I would like to take a sip of water. My throat is like kind of different. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about DTU based purchasing model. So DTU based purchasing model is like, as I said, DTU is a database transaction unit. So what exactly this is? In DTU based purchasing model, you get a blend of memory, CPU, and IO. It's not like you can have these resources individually. You cannot allocate these resources individually to your SQL database. It's a blend. It's a mixture of your CPU memory and IO, which is called as a one unit, and this unit is called database transaction unit. So you don't get to choose individually. So if you want to increase, if you want to improve or increase CPU or memory or IO or all three, then you have to increase the number of TTUs you're allocating to your Azure SQL resource. So in this database transaction unit purchasing model, you have three service tiers: the basic service tier, standard, and premium. Right? In the basic service tier, you have the maximum storage of 2 gigabyte, maximum DTU of, you can allocate maximum 5 DTUs, and the backup retention is 7 days. And this can be used for like dev or test environment. You don't have high availability replica or high availability for this particular service tier, but this can be used for dev or test environments. And just keep in mind, the performance for this service tier is very, very limited. Okay. Now, if you see into the standard purchasing model, this has a maximum storage of 1 terabyte, and this allows the maximum DTUs of up to 3000, and maximum backup retention is up to 35 days. So business apps, like which has some modern usage business apps, or maybe low to medium kind of workloads, they can definitely go for standard. No, I don't recommend this for heavy workloads, but you can go for low to medium kind of workloads. And the third one is premium. Premium service tier has, it allows the maximum storage of 4 terabyte, maximum DTU of 4000, and again the backup retention, it allows up to 35 days. Any mission critical workloads, yes, you can go for this premium DTU service tier. And just keep that in mind, as you increase the number of DTUs, cost also matters. Like cost, it increases the cost. So just keep that in mind. It is always important to determine, before you go with DTU purchase model or any purchase model, it is always important to determine your workload. So based on your workload, you will understand which model, which purchase model, and even which service tier you would be allocating to your resource. So that is very important. If you go through some of the Microsoft documentation, Microsoft provided you some formulae where you can determine your workload. So leverage those details to determine your workload, and then go with the service tier or purchase model accordingly. Scaling between DTUs may need some downtime, or maybe users may experience some connection drops. Otherwise, DTU is one of the ways like to go with SQL Server, Azure SQL Server. And now, moving on, now let me talk a little bit about virtual core purchase model. So V stands for virtual. So In this model, you have an option to choose your CPU, your memory, and your storage. So this is like kind of opposite to DTO, where you don't get to choose. You have everything get in one bundle. Whereas in vCore purchase model, you can choose the number of virtual cores you want to allocate. You can choose your memory. You can choose your storage, and this offers a greater flexibility and transparency and the ability to match your on-prem SQL servers. Like for instance, you have a mission critical application in your on-prem, which is working really fine, and you have decided to move to Azure. Just you can just replicate the same kind of configurations. You can have the same numbers of what you have in your on-prem. You can have the same numbers on your Azure as well, and then spin your Azure SQL database. So in vCore, again, you have three service tiers. So let's talk about each one for a minute. So the first one is general purpose service tier. So the general purpose service tier, it allows from 1 GB to maximum 4 GB of storage. The vCores, it allows from 2 to 128, and backup retention, it allows up to 35 days. Besides that, not only just 35 days, if you want to keep your backups for longer than 35 days, yes, that is even possible, which is called long LTR, stands for long-term retention, and that allows until 10 years. So you can store your backup up to 10 years. It's an optional. It's that option is available, but the default is up to 35 days. Up to 30, even if you want to keep it for 7 days, it's possible. The maximum is up to 35 days. And this can be used for balanced workloads and dev or any non-production environments. And the second one is business critical. So as the name indicates, you can go this for business critical applications, right? Where you get the minimum storage from 1 GB to maximum of 4 TB. And the number of vCores are from 2 to 128, and the backup retention is up to 35 days. And again, you can extend the long-term retention, you can extend up to 10 years. Again, low latency applications like financial applications, right? For those kind of applications, you can go to your business critical. Like for instance, once we get our salary, we want to check our balances, and we really don't want to see our financial application, like just taking longer time to show our balance, right? None of us like that. So for those kind of financial applications, or any financial application, can go with business critical. Now if you see the general purpose and business critical, you see the storage, maximum vCores, and backup retention almost look similar. So you must be wondering what exactly the difference is. The difference is the storage. In the back end, how the storage is working. In business critical, this shows a business critical service tier. It has the local speed SSD storage, whereas that's not the case with general purpose. So this has the fast speed SSD storage with business critical. So that's the main difference. And that's the reason the latency is low on business critical, whereas latency could be a little bit higher than business critical in general purpose service tier. And the third one is hyperscale. So hyperscale, it allows the minimum storage from 10 GB to maximum of 128 TB. And maximum vCores are 2 to 1. Minimum is like 2 and maximum is 128 vCores. And this allows the retention up to 35 days backup retention. And again, you have an option to store until like 10 years, which is called long-term retention. And like rapidly growing database, unpredictable workloads, and which needs like live analytics, live analysis, like stocks, like a market, like stock market. For those kind of applications, you can go with hyperscale. If you're using a single database or elastic pool, and if you're using like more than 3,000 DTUs, then I recommend to go with vCore, because vCore, if you go with more than 3,000 DTUs for SQL database, then it's better to go with vCore, because that gives you better pricing that gives you better pricing with vCore. Again, it all depends on your environment, it all depends on your need, but I'm just trying to share my experience. And also, conversion of conversion from DTU based model to vCore based model is possible, and it is totally online. There is no downtime needed for this. So if you're using Azure SQL managed instance, then Azure SQL managed instance will not support DTU based purchasing model. It supports only vCore based purchasing model. With that, let's move on to the demo. Can anyone please confirm if you're able to see my screen, my Azure portal
Yes,
screen? Okay,
we can
thank
Yes,
you.
see
we see
Azure
it.
portal. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you. So this is my homepage. I'm going to create Azure SQL database, and here just search for Azure SQL and click Azure SQL. So this is the Azure SQL homepage. For now, please ignore what is available here. And when you click on create, and when you click on create, here you see three options: Azure SQL database, SQL managed instance, SQL virtual machine, right? So we have already talked about SQL managed instance, and I already spoke about SQL virtual machine a little bit when I was talking about infrastructure as a service deployment model. Now let's look into Azure SQL databases. When you click on Azure SQL database, it shows you three kinds of resources. First one is single database, second one is elastic pool, and the third one is database server. Let's talk a little bit about each of these resource type. Single database. A single database is nothing but it's a standalone database. That means it has its own dedicated resources like compute and storage. So it is generally used for any lightweight applications, or for instance like a web app which has a database has its backend, which has one database as its backend. Then yes, you go for those kind of applications, you can go for single database. And if you choose single database, then Azure bills you per database. So because it is treated individually and independently, you are billed per database. Even if you create more than one database, each database is treated individually. Each database is treated is isolated, and it's treated individually. So that's like a short description about single database. And the second one is elastic pool. So as the name indicates, it has a shared resource pool for multiple SQL databases, so which has like varying and unpredictable usage patterns for those. And when you have like more than one database, which they all can put under a single elastic pool, where all these databases will be using the resources under this pool. So if you have like 10 databases, 10 databases will use, all the 10 databases will use the resources available on this resource pool based on the demand. Not all data, if for instance, you can use for the applications where you have like 10 to 15 database, and not all databases busy at the same time. So each database varies in their workload, and each database varies with their busy schedule. Then those kind of scenarios can fit into the elastic pool. In this elastic pool resource type, the billing happens per pool and not per database. So whenever if you want to increase the resources of the elastic pool, and then you pay the bill as per the pool. So that's about elastic pool. And the third one is database server. So let's talk about here database server. Database server, as the name indicates, it's not a database, but it's a container to hold the databases. So what I mean by that is like you're going to create some databases, right? And those databases will be hosting under this Azure database server. So this Azure database server will not cost anything for you, because it doesn't have any compute, no storage on its own, until you you have the databases hosting on that particular server. So just creating database server would not cost you anything. So besides hosting, this acts as a central management for auditing, for firewall rules, for managing server level settings are used in the connection strings. Like application connections will have connection strings, right? So for that you need to provide your complete server name, and those that server name can be given from this database server settings and Azure dependent settings. So all those settings you can take from this database server. Now I will go with creation of a single database. So here I have Azure subscription. So this is the home page for your database creation. And here, if you go with the options here, you have the subscription. And subscription is my Azure subscription one. This is my default subscription. This is my free account. So I just have Azure subscription one. If you want to, like in general, in real time, you will have more than one subscription. So generally, just select the subscription based on your needs. And once you have the subscription, so let's talk about what exactly a subscription is. So a subscription is an Azure subscription is like a billing container that groups all your Azure resources like virtual machine, databases, storage, etc., and that tracks your usage and cost. It is like it's like a billing container. Okay. And suppose like when you're creating a resource and you don't know anything about it, the beauty part with Azure is if you hover over a small symbol here, it gives you one or two lines of information what exactly this particular section does. So that's really cool option which Azure provides. And once you have your subscription selected, then select your resource group. So what is a resource group? A resource group is nothing but it's like a logical container to manage all your resource. In your SQL server, whenever you are creating a resource, that should come under a resource group. So you cannot create your Azure resource you cannot create any resource in Azure without being coming under a resource group. So here I already have a resource group called Padma RG. RG stands for resource group. Let me create one more called Padma RG2, resource group 2, and click OK. And let me give you, I want to select my database name as SDB, probably 2. So whenever like you go with database name or any names here, it tries to give you some prompts. Just read through these prompts and ensure all these practices are maintained while giving the database name or while giving any name. And coming to the server, create I won't be using the existing server. I have one here. I'll be creating a new server here. So I'm creating a new server. And let me give the server name as new stars of data, new stars of data. And if you see the prompt, it's not allowing me to do capital letters. And if you read through this, server name should not contain the reserved words. Ensure like any of your names, not just server name, any of your names does not contain reserved words. Reserved words like Azure, reserved words like Key Vault, all those reserved words. Just try not to have those reserved words. So I'm just changing it to the small letters. And here .database.windows.net is automatically available. So once your server is created, your server name looks like new stars of data 2025 database.windows.net. That's how like your database server name looks like. And location, because I'm based out of Illinois, my subscription has got created under Central US. So I have to choose Central US. Eastern US is not being allowed. And the third option is authentication method. You have like three kinds of authentication methods. First one is Microsoft Entra only authentication, which is just like your Windows Active Directory. Initially, it was called as Azure Active Directory. Now that's been renamed as Microsoft Entra authentication. So if you're clicking use Microsoft Entra only authentication, that's like your Windows authentication. And if you use both SQL and Microsoft Entra authentication, that's like your mixed mode. If you remember in your on-prem, you have something called mixed mode. So it is like similar option. And the third one is use SQL authentication. For demo purposes, I'll be using uh, SQL only authentication, SQL authentication. I'm giving password. So ensure you remember your user ID and password if you're giving SQL only authentication to log into your server. So I click OK. And now it is asking me if you want to use SQL Elastic Pool, and I gave no. So I think let me tell you an example about SQL Elastic Pool. So when I was learning SQL, when I was learning about Azure for the first time, I try to relate to more of the real-time examples, which I already mentioned, right? So Elastic Pool is nothing but I can give you one example. Like imagine there is a restaurant, and inside the restaurant, every restaurant will have a kitchen, right? Imagine there are like three chefs inside the kitchen. It's not like you have to give different kitchen to each chef. All three chefs use the same kitchen and uses the resources inside the kitchen. So that is not so that example you can relate as elastic pool. Under the elastic pool, you have the resources, and the databases will be using these resources available based on their demand. Okay, so that's one example of the elastic pool. And I'm not choosing elastic pool here for demo purposes because I'm just creating one database. As ours is demo, I'm selecting the development environment and leaving it as default. Coming to compute and storage here, as we talked about the purchase models, the multiple service tiers, if you want to select your different service tiers, or if you want to go with different purchase models, here is a place. So here you have under vCore, you have general purpose, hyperscale, and business critical. Because mine is a free Azure account, I have hyperscale and business critical got disabled, but in real-time environment, you could be having it enabled. And you have DTU base, where basic, standard, and premium is disabled for me, but you could have it enabled. And also, if you want to increase your recourse, here is the place, just increase it. And whenever you make any changes, just make a note of the the price, estimated price, cost summary on your right hand side. Always keep a note of this purchase summary, of this cost summary. Based on your selections, this cost could vary. And if you want to if you want to auto pause your database after so many hours or minutes or days of inactivity, then you can do that. So I'm just leaving it after like 2 hours. Just pause my database. And would you like to make this database zone redundant? And for now, I would say no, and apply. And here you have again another option called backup storage redundancy. Under backup storage redundancy, you have four options, right? So you have locally redundant backup storage, zone redundant, geo redundant, and geo zone redundant. So let's talk what exactly these options are. So locally redundant is it replicates the data within your storage account to one or more availability zones, which is especially availability zones, or you can think as a data center located in your primary region. So that is nothing but I'm sorry, that is nothing but your locally redundant backup storage. And the second one is zone redundant backup storage. So zone redundant is like it replicates the data within your storage account to 3 or more availability zones, or you can call it as inside the data centers located in your primary region. So locally redundant and zone redundant is still at the primary region. It doesn't have a secondary region yet. Where the secondary region comes into picture when you go with the third option, geo redundant backup storage. So geo-redundant is nothing but if you have like your 3 copies of your data in one data center in the primary region, and that data is asynchronously copied to your secondary region, and this secondary region could be hundreds of miles away from your primary region. So hundreds or thousands of miles could be away from your primary region. So it have a set of copies in your primary region and one more set in your secondary region, right? And what is geozone redundant? So it's again like kind of a similar concept, but you have 3 copies of your data in 3 different data centers in primary region, and the same is replicated to your secondary region. So when I was reading through these examples, initially I understood this with a basic example. So the example is like, take a basket and imagine you have 3 eggs in it, right? So all 3 eggs, and consider these 3 eggs are your 3 backups. If all the 3 backups are in the same basket, that means that is like your locally redundant storage. If all these 3 eggs are placed in 3 different baskets in the same region, then that is zone redundant storage. If you like when it comes to geo redundant, you have 3 eggs in a basket and you have the same copy of 3 more eggs in a different basket in a entirely different region, that is like your zone redundant storage. And for geo zone redundant storage, you have 3 eggs in 3 different baskets in one region, and the same is replicated to a different region, that is your zone redundant geo zone redundant storage. So this is with a simple example I understood in a better way, so I would like to share the same with you guys. So I'm just leaving it to locally redundant. Just moving on, I'm having the networking, everything I'm going to leave it as default, except the connectivity method. For now, demo purposes, I'm giving public endpoint. For all the security purposes, always try to use the robust firewall rules, the better encryption options, the encrypted connections. Just try to use all the most of the security features available before besides leaving it as default. And security, going to the next page, security, for now for demo purposes I'm leaving it as default. And additional settings, if you go here, there are like use existing data. I'm going with none, but if you have any backup, you can select the backup, and or else if you want to use sample database provided by Azure itself, you can use that. But just keep in mind, whenever you select the sample database, your specifications on compute and storage could change based on this backup size. So just keep that in mind. I'll go with none for now. And my collation, I'm going to leave it as default, but if you want to use a different collation settings, just find the right collation for you and then select that. And for system maintenance, the default system maintenance window is 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. So I'm leaving it as default. And going to tags, these tags are nothing but it allows you to enable you to categorize your resources for consolidated billing view, and also you have that information available here. So for now, I'll give database name as test db2. You can just provide your name and value here, and then if you like, you can just add as many as tags you want. I don't think tags will cost you anything. Then review, and just review all your selections, and also ensure, like before you hit create, ensure like you're looking at your cost and click create. When you click create, it shows this is validating, and once validation is done, if you see on your right hand of the page, if you see the deployment is in progress. So this deployment would take 3 to 5 minutes. While this deployment is in progress, I would like to go to my existing Azure SQL Server. So to for this demo purposes, so while the deployment is in progress, so we can save some time. If you see, I have created a database called new SQL DB. And in this blade, you can see what is my resource group, what is the status. You see this as paused because from past few hours, there is no activity on this particular database, and that's the reason it shows as paused. This is a base out of Central US and Azure subscription. This is a subscription ID. I did not use any tags, so that's the reason it shows as no tags here. No tags, I mean, it shows like add tags. This is the server name, newstars.database.windows.net is the complete server name, and show database connections. This is the place where you can see if there are any database connection strings are available. And this is my pricing tier, and auto pause is like 1 hour because from past 1 hour I don't have any activity. It shows as paused. Let me copy this and go to my SSMS. And please let me know if you're able to see my SSMS.
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. So I will connect to the server now. I just copied the server name from Azure. I pasted it here because I used SQL Server authentication. I remembered my username and I remember my password. If you want to just remember the password, hit this option. And I did not select any encryption, so I'll just leave it optional, and trust server certificate. I will select it and then hit connect. So, and here is your Azure SQL database. So if you expand this, you have all the options. Just create tables. This is our new database. I don't have any data in it. Just create tables and load data in it. And if you see here, you don't have SQL Server agent because ours is a PaaS service, and SQL Server for Azure SQL, not for PaaS service, managed instance will have Azure SQL agent, but ours is Azure SQL database. You don't have SQL Server agent. And even if you see, if you right click on the server, you don't find any server options here to select or configure or even to view, right? And as I mentioned before, you don't have backup maintenance will be taken care by Azure itself, right? So even if I try to do a backup, it shouldn't allow me. And yes, if you see the backup database backup statement is not supported in this version of SQL Server. That means backups are taken care by Azure, and we don't have an option to do exclusive backups. So that's about my demo. And now I'm going back to my slides. I'll talk a little bit about Azure encryption best practices here. So always try to rotate your keys. So regularly changing access keys and secrets reduces your risk of compromise. So try to always rotate your keys. I like some of the companies does quarterly once in a quarter. So again, that's one of the best practices. So based on your company needs, so try to rotate your keys as much as possible, and use built-in tools like Azure Security Center to detect threats, misconfigurations, or any suspicious activities in real time. So you have the best tools available provided by Microsoft Azure. Um, uh, Try to encrypt all your environments, not just production. Try to encrypt. If you're encrypting your data in production, then try to encrypt in all non-production itself, so that in that way you know how your data is behaving in non-production itself before it moves on to production. So encrypt the data not just in rest but also in transit to maintain the confidentiality and integrity of the data. And try to store your secrets, connection strings, and passwords, or anything secured in Azure Key Vault. In that way, your data is much secured and it's not compromised. And never try to hard code your secrets or your passwords in your connection strings. That's not a good way of working with your secrets. And the final one is like use compliance tools like dashboards. We have Azure SQL dashboard, Azure dashboards, and compliance reports for your audit purposes. So that's like one best thing which you can do with the inbuilt tools. Um, uh, so RBAC. So let me go back to my portal. And if you want to provide access to different people, to different users, then go to your Azure server, then click here Azure Access Control. And when you click on Access Control here, you have an option to add, right? So click add, and you can assign n number of, there are n number of roles, roles available in within the Azure SQL. So based on your requirement, just allocate the appropriate role available for your SQL Azure database, for your Azure SQL database. So if you see like administrative roles, you have like owner, contributor, role-based access control administrator, and user access administrators. All these are administrative roles. Uh, and if you want to create and if you want to allocate the existing job function role based on like your job function, you can allocate the appropriate role to the user. So just click on the appropriate role and then assign. You need to create users before you assign the roles. So just to create users and then allocate role accordingly. So this is about RBAC, and I would like to give you some takeaways um, from this session. That is, always try to, I mean, you have already Copilot available in your Azure. So try to use it, like to maybe to write some queries or to tune some of your, and if you have any troubleshooting issues, then try to use Copilot, and with all the artificial intelligence, like try to use it to troubleshoot some issues. And the second thing is like, let's talk some free stuff here. Let's talk about some free stuff here. So Azure SQL database is free. So you heard it right. Azure SQL database is free, but with some limitations. So it's a long-term free availability, which Microsoft is providing with some restrictions. Your database, you can store data up to 32 gigabytes, and also the backups are up to 32 gigabytes and not more than that. Anything more than 32 gigabytes, it doesn't come under free. So if you're creating 10 databases, then ensure all the 10 databases are within, all the 10 databases combined are within 32 gigs. I'm not talking about each database 32 gigs. I'm talking about all 10 databases in 32 gigs. So just ensure it is falling under 32 gigs. And you can create up to 10 databases in the free version. In this free Azure SQL, you can create up to 10 databases and not more than that. And then again, like with this free, you have auto pause enabled. So just to save some resources, to save some cost, auto pause of the database is automatically enabled. And if you wanted to convert your existing database to your free version of SQL database, then that's not possible. So you have to create a database in the free version, and then it is considered as free, but you cannot already convert the existing database to a free version. So just keep that in mind. And again, this particular option is not available for student subscription. Unfortunately, I'm sorry guys, if there are any students here, as per Microsoft documentation, it's not allowed for students. This free offer is not allowed for is not available for students. And also this free offer is not part of it can be, this SQL database can be part of elastic pool or failover groups. It should be your SQL database itself, but not under elastic pool and failover groups. So just keep that in mind. And and once a region is selected for one database, under this free version, once a database region is selected for one database, the same region should be used for all the other 9 databases, plus the one that is created, like total 10 databases. It automatically allows the same region, and you will not have an option to change the location. So just keep that in mind. And moving on, the default compatibility for Azure SQL database is 160. If you want to lower it, yes, you can lower it. I think it is allowed until like 2008 or 2, if I'm not wrong. It is still allowed, but always keep that in mind. If you want to lower your compatibility, the latest features of the latest features may not be available with the lower compatibility, and again you have to change your code um, just to make sure like your application is compatible with database compatibility version. So just keep that in mind. And as we see that Azure SQL database has no SQL Server agent, but with Elastic Jobs, you can automate some of your tasks, which Azure SQL agent does for you. In that way, you may not feel that Azure SQL agent is not available. So actually, no agent is needed when you have Elastic Jobs. And the next one is prefer Microsoft Enter ID for security and for compliance purposes, instead using your SQL user. So Microsoft Enter ID is always secure. Try to use your PITR, that is point in time recovery, and LTR, long term retention backups, which is available for in your SQL Server database. So this allows you to have your database backups available for longer time, and if there is any accidental data deletion, or if you have if you have your database, you did some mistake, and if you want to do some changes, you have to undo your changes, then those backups will be available for you. um, and the last one is don't allow broad IP ranges like the one which I show, like 0000/0. If you do that by mistake, I mean, this happens sometimes by mistake, right? If you do that, that means like your database is available for the whole internet, and that will be like hacker's dream and Cisco's nightmare. So just try to avoid any unnecessary things like that. With Here are the references of my. This is from these references I have uh, captures information. So here is the references for your information. And with this, I end my session. I really thank you for New Stars of Data for giving me this valuable opportunity to speak. Thank you so much, guys. This definitely from the bottom of my heart. I'm so thankful. And I'm also thankful to my mentor, Deepti Goguri. It's really privileged to get mentorship from expert like Deepti Goguri, and our mentorship journey is really incredible. So thank you, Deepti. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.